What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome back to the Sooner Surge. It's a Sunday afternoon. My mind is still just baffled at how OU could lose 2 weeks in a row and then look like they did last night. But what's probably more baffling and confusing is this Big 12 tiebreaker scenario system. Guys, we've been talking for about the last hour and a half and still haven't wrapped our heads around every possibility. So we're going to do a video here to basically talk through what the chances are for OU to be back in Arlington, the road to Arlington. Before we get started, get on the journey and the road to following the Sooner Surge by clicking subscribe, turning on your notifications, liking, and commenting. So let's just start, I guess, easiest scenario possible. Obviously, OU doesn't control their own destiny. OU needs help. It's not a great place to be, but as they said in Dumb and Dumber, you're saying there's a chance, and there absolutely is a scenario where OU, multiple scenarios where they get to Arlington. So let's start, guys.
Yeah, I'll start it out with, honestly, the most likely scenario of what happens over the next 2 weeks and wins and losses in the Big 12. And that is, you're going to say OU wins out. Obviously, that has to happen for OU to even have a chance. Texas wins out. Kansas State wins out. And OSU wins out. And that scenario, not good for the Sooners, as the tiebreakers is determined by the Kansas matchup. Those three teams, Kansas State wins the tiebreaker because they're 7-2 with the win over Kansas in the last 2 weeks of the season, and then they play Texas that's 8-1 in the Big 12 championship.
Well, and which is crazy because Okie State gets hosed on that because they beat OU and Kansas State and they get screwed. But that's the way it works. Common opponent. OU didn't play K-State, so let's Hunter. Let's see what happens if OSU wins out, OU wins out, Texas loses to Iowa State. That's a pretty much lock for OU. Am I correct?
Are you saying K-State wins out as well?
It doesn't matter. Either Iowa State or K-State wins out. I think either one would be a lock for OU, correct? If Texas loses, OU's in.
Yeah, so if K-State wins out, OU wins out, OSU wins out, Texas loses to, I believe that was Iowa State.
Iowa State.
It would be Kansas State and OU in the Big 12 championship because the tiebreaker is then determined by Iowa State, K-State, and OU won those games. OSU and Texas would have then both lost.
And then it's flipped. If Iowa State beats K-State at the end, it would be OU Iowa State.
Correct. And what you
No, that scenario would then be Oklahoma State OU, because then it's Iowa State gets the short end of it.
OU would still be in.
Yeah, OU would still be in it. That's the biggest thing from that one.
So a loss to Texas to Iowa State locks OU in the Big 12 title game if they win out.
I'm pretty sure it's a lock.
I wouldn't say lock completely because crazy things can happen in the Big 12 where upsets and those lower games kind of change around some of the seeding possibly. But I would say that the chances then are pretty good for OU to make it.
We're going to know a lot after next week. But look, here's the deal. You kind of just got to, if you want to know really how the tiebreaker works, what you really got to figure out is once it gets to a 3 or 4 team tie, it's going to go to the highest common opponent that all have played. That's what a common opponent is. It doesn't matter if 3 of the 4 have played and 1 hasn't. It's the highest one. So it could go down to UCF if they've all played UCF. I mean, that's kind of how it's going to work. I see Jackson kind of putting his hand on his head. Yeah, it's confusing.
Yeah. Most of the common opponents, it's going to be Kansas or Iowa State because it's the highest ranked common opponent. Those two are pretty much going to be on the outside pretty much regardless, I believe. Kansas now has 3 losses. Iowa State is going to have to keep on winning to stay at 2 losses in the conference. So those two are pretty much in most scenarios going to be on the outside, but will be the shared opponent for the teams that are tied at 7-2.
I mean, it's wild to think that Oklahoma is even in this spot because going into Saturday, it felt like I mean, I wouldn't say it felt like all hope was lost because there still was a chance, and this team isn't their season was not over, as Drake Stoops said. They still had something to play for. But it felt like Oklahoma, it felt like they were down, and now seeing all these scenarios they have, right? Us on Saturday, we're gonna be rooting for Iowa State, obviously, to beat Texas. We're gonna be rooting for a few other games to happen. So even though Oklahoma still has the chance to be in the spot, honestly, some of it comes to the thanks of Joey McGuire and Texas Tech that they were able to pull off that crazy game. But I mean, Oklahoma guys, they still have a chance to accomplish a goal and that was to win the Big 12 championship.
Yeah, the thing is they do need help, and again, it's not where you want to be, obviously, but you do have a chance. And like you mentioned, as much as Sooner fans have disliked Matt Campbell and Dana Holgerson, you got to root for both of those guys this week.
Well,
plain and simple.
Let's get back to the scenario for a second. Let's say Texas wins out, OU wins out, OSU loses to Houston. Does that lock OU in?
Are you saying K-State wins out too?
I'm saying Texas wins out, OU wins out, K-State wins out, OSU loses to Houston.
That could get tricky. I think OU's in that.
K-State wins out.
Because
it would be Texas OU.
Yeah. Okay, so if OSU loses to Houston, OU's in.
No, because here's how
in every scenario.
Let me explain how that would work.
The only way that doesn't work is that Texas loses.
If Tech were to beat Texas the last week of the season, OU would be done.
But what I'm saying is if Texas wins out and OSU loses to Houston, OU's a lock.
Yes, I'm pretty sure that's locked.
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, so that's one scenario that's a lock. Yeah. Another scenario is OSU wins out, which they should, and Texas stumbles to Iowa State. Pretty good chance that's a lock. OU gets in.
Now, in that one, there's a way OU could not get in.
Very small.
That would be K-State OU. And again, are you wanting to say K-State wins out as well?
Yeah. Yeah, it wouldn't matter if K-State or Iowa State. Whoever wins that final game between those two, it doesn't matter. OU's in. You can flip those.
Yeah, it would just the only thing that it changes is who they play.
Yeah, so
Iowa
those are
State
the two
wins
scenarios
out.
that's the easiest.
If Iowa State wins out, you play OSU. Kansas State wins out, you play Kansas State. So that would be kind of a matchup that a lot of fans would not want. Coming into the season, it looked like you're not going to get Kansas State.
I'll take any matchup in Arlington.
Let me throw another scenario. OSU loses to Houston, which we all want to happen. But say Texas also loses to Iowa State and K-State wins out.
OU's in.
It would be OU versus K-State, right?
Yeah, K-State would be the 1 seed. OU would be the 2 seed.
So it's pretty simple what has to happen.
You need one of those two to lose. OSU or Texas need to lose one.
And you preferably need Texas to lose to Iowa State and not Tech.
Correct. You really don't care about the Red Raiders beating Texas. Now you could if they don't lose next week, it can end up helping them. But you really need OSU or Texas out of the picture after next week. That's the way I assume this is working.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and again, there's a scenario in which Texas loses to Texas Tech, OSU wins out, Iowa State beats K-State, so Kansas State loses out, OSU wins out, and OU's left out. It's Texas, Oklahoma State.
So you're saying if Texas loses to Tech and OSU wins out, then it would come down to that final game between Iowa State and K-State.
Correct. You would need
if K-State wins. If K-State wins that, OU's left out. If Iowa State wins that, OU would go.
Depends on Kansas.
No.
Yeah.
It does. It does depend on Kansas, actually.
I don't think it does, Jeremy. I think you're out of your ever-loving mind.
It doesn't depend on Kansas. Yeah. That one is.
I don't know where you're getting that.
Because I just thought if the tiebreaker was between OU and K-State, you go to Texas as the highest common opponent.
If it
OSU didn't play K-State or Texas, I mean.
Oh, because the 3-way tie, you mean?
Yeah, they would if it's a 3-way tie of OU, Kansas State, Oklahoma State. They did not all play Texas, so that
They all
game's not
played
used.
Kansas.
Yeah, so OU's left out.
No, that's why I said Kansas losing out matters. Kansas would not be the highest ranked opponent, guys.
Who would
And
be,
that's
Jeremy?
Kansas State would have already beaten Kansas. That means they'd have 4 losses, Jay.
Yeah, so if Kansas
You
loses
guys
out,
are wrong. Sorry.
if Kansas loses out, which includes a upset at home to Cincinnati, K-State wins out, OU, Texas, and OSU all win out, it would
Y'all
be Texas OU in the Big 12 championship.
In other words, we're 10 minutes and 35 seconds into a video, and we haven't answered a whole lot. Look, guys,
yeah, there's 2 things that really need to happen for OU to get in for sure. OSU lose to Houston or Texas lose to Iowa State. Those
correct.
2 things.
That would be great. That would be great. And I know Hunter's got a link that he can put in our chat, guys, that's got like a tiebreaker automatic generator. He will put that in a link. And if you want to go ahead and tell us where that is, Hunter, so we can give credit to who that is.
Yeah, the site's called bball.nothing.net. They have all sorts of basketball and football standing generators, I believe, for most conferences, but Big 12, especially for the Power 5. In here, all their stuff comes from ESPN based on the past games, and then you choose the remaining games left on the season, and it generates it based off of the tiebreakers from the Big 12 rule book.
Yeah, so next week, guys, OU kicks off at 11, 10 o'clock Utah time, which is, again, thanks, Big 12, absolute idiotic. But watch that game. Watch the Sooners put it on the BYU Cougars, and then put on your Houston Cougar uniform and root those on. And then late night, 7 o'clock kick, you got Iowa State, Texas, and Ames. That's really what you need to happen this week. We'll get back at you next week after these round of games this week. But there you have it. There are some scenarios
and again,
where OU makes it.
And again, if Kansas loses out, it's a whole lot easier for OU.
Exactly.
In all of these scenarios.
Yeah, so there you have it, guys. Thanks for joining us on the Sooner Surge. I hope we didn't confuse you too much. Hope it cleared some out. Clear as mud, as they say. Till next time, Boomer.